Off the coast of Virginia sails a solitary and combat-hardened ship named for an admiral who died aboard the battleship Arizona at Pearl Harbor. The USS Kidd is returning home to Norfolk after conducting the longest convoy mission since World War II. They had painted their white hull numbers gray to reduce visibility, a visible symbol that the crew voted to keep for the trip home.
Steady 282I. Where's the right coming to 282?
They plot a course into their home port.
Who's that coming out, XO?
Captain Dan Murphy has brought his destroyer and 350 men to the Persian Gulf and back. When the Kidd sailed out of Norfolk into the Gulf and into harm's way, there was the fear that, especially in the wake of the Stark incident, that missiles or guns might be fired against it. But it turns out that it was the Kidd that got to fire. The Kidd fired 5-inch shells for 90 minutes to destroy Iranian oil platforms used to stage assaults on Gulf shipping. The officer directing the gunfire down in the ship's darkened combat center worried at first about retaliation.
But, discipline and training came through for us, and we didn't have any problems knocking them down.
Captain Murphy says his scariest moment came when the U.S.-flagged Kuwaiti tanker Bridgeton struck a mine with the Kidd nearby.
Making the decision as to which way to turn the ship to avoid hitting one was probably the most momentous decision that I made.
The sailors endured months of tension on the watch for mines and missiles, suffering 120-degree heat that burned the skin through clothes.
Glad you were there?
Yeah, I did something for my country, give something back. I think everybody should.
Now, after so much heat, so much cold on this warm welcome home, complete with tugs spouting water in salute and banners flying overhead, a hero's welcome for all, an individual greeting for each that begins with the captain's family. His ship is safe, his men are back, the Kidd is home. Jim McClure, 13 News, aboard the USS Kidd.
The Senate did make one departure suggesting an income tax increase for wealthier Virginians, different from what the governor wanted.
We've got some powerful people here, Jim, each with his own plan. What does the governor say about the plans different from his own that were passed by the committees?
Well, last week, Jane, he was saying that alternatives would hurt, that unity was important. He changed his tune. I was talking with him yesterday, and he said basically what he wants is the bottom line. He understands that there's going to be negotiation in this sort of thing. As long as he gets that $6 billion he says he needs for roads over the next 10 years, he'll be content with whatever we see coming out of the General Assembly next week.
About 20 miles south of Richmond on Interstate 95, the city of Colonial Heights welcomes you. Last Saturday, Martin Luther King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference marched here because they didn't feel welcome in the nearly all-white city. This week, a much smaller group marched to keep the welcome mat out, but only for whites. Roughly 80 people marched through Colonial Heights, led by members of the Southern National Front. The Southern National Front, based in North Carolina, is a white separatist group, a group brought together to keep the races apart.
That now white people have to have an organization working for them. They face discrimination in hiring, promotions, college admittance, union admittance, college scholarships, forced busing, high non-white immigration. We have to do something about it.
We're white! We're white! Come on, George! Just begun to fight!
Marchers from Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina marched by a sprinkling of spectators much smaller than last week's crowd. The largest group here consists of police. The spin of rotors, a cloud of dust, and a mighty force of state police watches over the town. Colonial Heights resident George Grammer is out for a walk to cut his weight, for what he sees raises his temperature.
This is going to be a hell of a picture.
State troopers in riot gear practicing at the junior high school. Their presence hasn't been needed for the quiet marches, and Grammer says neither has the taxes he's been paying here for 42 years.
Thousands and thousands of dollars for these policemen to be in here from the state, the county, the city, and even from D.C. Same thing today, and I don't like for my money to be wasted like that.
Locals say the protesters, black and white, are outsiders stirring up trouble. As for the Southern National Front, it doesn't only want to stay separate from blacks, but all minorities.
In the Southwest, it's Mexican-Americans. Now, let's strike that. Mexicans. They can never be Americans. You got to be white to be an American.
The marching and trouble is over for now. Jim McClure, 13 News, Colonial Heights.
You think you know a lot about oatmeal?
Well, this is going to surprise you.
It seems the influence of Wilford Brimley has extended beyond the breakfast table. Brimley's grandfatherly roles in movies and television have led to a successful Quaker Oats commercial campaign that features the stick-to-your-ribs meal with a slogan designed to stick in your mind.
Quaker Oats. It's the right thing to do.
Governor Gerald Blyles boosted social programs, not oatmeal, in his State of the Commonwealth address. He says he wants to spend more because
it happens to be the right thing to do.
Lieutenant Governor Doug Wilder doesn't always toe the administration line in his legislative proposals, but you might recognize one line.
And yes, indeed, it is the right thing to do.
And in Senate floor arguments, you guessed it.
I viewed it as the right thing for us to do.
From the Senate chamber to the 6th floor cafeteria of the General Assembly office building, oatmeal is catching on with lobbyists and lawmakers alike.
Yes, sir. And if it gets the job done.
In a capital area that often debates matters of church and state, there seems to be a strange relationship between podium and plate. But Newport News Senator Bobby Scott orders grits instead.
Knock on South Carolina caviar.
Southern caviar was the main staple of the governor's recent breakfast for the Capitol Press Corps. Serving reporters oatmeal at this old Southern mansion would be the wrong thing to do.
But I happen to believe in the philosophy when a thing is right, the time is always right.
Lieutenant Governor Wilder also denies oatmeal inspiration, but sees the trend.
Well, you know, I happened to have been at the crab breakfast this morning. One of the gentlemen who was organizing it took a quote from the governor's State of the State address, and that single quote was, "It's the right thing to do."
And the tasty way to do it.
Jim McClure, 13 News, Richmond. The coelacanth existed only in fossils until found alive in 1939, a footnote to a story of extinction 70 million years ago. The story was wrong. This fish, one of the latest catches, and scientists have come cross-country to Virginia to study it. No coelacanth has survived capture from 50-degree waters hundreds of feet below the Indian Ocean's surface.
There are so many things that are unknown about this animal now that with the new technologies that we've been able to apply to these frozen specimens, there are going to be major advances in science.
The coelacanth is a missing link that's no longer missing, and as such, a vital key to finding out the origin of man's evolution and life in the sea. With the lab work complete, the prehistoric creature is taken to Riverside Hospital in Newport News, the first coelacanth to be analyzed by the newest generation of medical scanners. First with the 10-year-old CAT scan, and now with the 1-year-old magnetic resonance imager, nicknamed MRI.
The specimen is put there on its stomach.
It's prone position. The devices produce three-dimensional cross-sections that will be analyzed for years to come.
And the MR is better for showing blood vessels and nerves, whereas the CAT scanner is really good at showing bones and muscles.
The faces of seasoned and savvy scientists reduced to the starstruck wonder of children, discovering for the first time. This, said one of them, is what science is all about. Jim McClure, 13 News, Newport News.